What up, bitches? Welcome back to Lockdown Universe, home of the bizarre, peculiar, and unheard of stories of UFO legend and paranormal lore. Welcome back, welcome back. Happy to be back. Hopefully you guys are doing well and taking care of yourselves. Love to have you back. So today we're going to talk about some really interesting shit. We're going to talk about Edward Snowden. We're going to talk about a U.S. senator by the name of Church who blew the whistle on NSA recording. Our own citizens, and we're going to talk about why the government can't stop riots and other things that are going on in the world, like teen takeovers, mass mobs, and other things that are going on. So let's talk about it, because the government is recording everything, and they know ahead of time what's going to happen because they have all this direct knowledge information. Why aren't they spreading it to local police departments and pre-striking these potential riots ahead of time? Not only that, why aren't they stopping other big mass casualty events when they could probably predict with AI a lot of this information? So let's get into what they can do from the insiders themselves. So in 1975, we'll go back in time just a little bit here to a U.S. senator. His name is Frank Church. Never heard of him before, but I did a little bit of research, and I thought that this story was really interesting. He says that the NSA's capability, and if you don't know who the NSA is the team that basically records basically everything we do, and they do internal gathering of information so that they have what they need to take action. They might give it to the FBI, they might give it to whoever they need to give it to. But the NSA's capability, according to him, in 1975, this is before the internet, okay? Think about this. Before the internet, he said that he sat in front of a television camera and said that the NSA's capability, god damn, this freaking horrible lighting going on. The NSA's capability at any time could be turned around on the American people, and no American would have any privacy left. There would be no place to hide. This was stated by Frank Church on live television in 1975. The internet didn't come out till like 1990s. Okay. So his name was Frank Church. He spent 2 years investigating what his own government, the U.S. government, was doing in secret. And nobody really listened. I mean, 38 years later, we have a 29-year-old contractor who sat in a hotel room in Hong Kong with his laptop full of classified documents and made a phone call to a journalist and said, "Hey, I got something to say." And that was Edward Snowden. And he blew the lid on all kinds of different projects, and we'll get into those too. And he showed the world that basically Frank Church was right. It just took about 30 years for it to happen. So let's get into it. It's Lockdown Universe. Let's jump in and get behind the scenes on what actually happened here. So before Snowden, the world, according to the government, let's talk about this. So to understand why Edward Snowden actually mattered, we'll talk about the official story of the government before he came along. So the official story is, and there's many different parts of the government, but the official story is that the NSA collects foreign intelligence on foreign targets. Well, we know that's not true because that was their story. So I'll hold off. Let's go to their story. The NSA collects foreign intelligence on foreign targets. That's right. And the American citizens are cleanly and clearly defended by the Fourth Amendment, right? Any surveillance of Americans requires a warrant from a judge and a reasonable, articulable suspicion. Yes. So the FISA court provides independent judicial oversight, and the system has checks and balances. Well, you'd think you'd be safe. You think you'd be covered by the government. The government's your buddy. It's looking out for you. That was the official story. Every senior intelligence official who testified before Congress between 2001 and 2013 told some version of that story because we had the Patriot Act. We were trying to track down terrorists. We were trying to make sure that we had placed an entire brand new branch of the government, Department of Homeland Security, in place to protect the homeland. But in March 2013, March 2013, I remember 2013. That was a messed up year for me, but also a very liberating year. Just 3 months before Edward Snowden's leaks, Director of National Intelligence James Clapper was asked directly by Senator Wyden, does the NSA collect any type of data at all on millions or hundreds of millions of Americans? And Clapper said, no, sir, not wittingly. What the fuck? Who uses wittingly? What is he, George Washington? And that was a lie. That was documented on the record, under oath lie. And Snowden's documents proved that within months. Clapper was never charged with perjury. And let's go back to Mr. Church's committee in 1975. So by 1974, America was in crisis. Watergate basically brought down a president, unfortunately. The Vietnam War exposed systematic government deception because they basically lied about why we had to go to Vietnam. In December 1974, journalist Seymour Hersh published a front-page news article on the New York Times, basically revealing the CIA had conducted mass domestic surveillance, which the CIA, their sole purpose is to work on outside of the American borders intelligence, right? Foreign intelligence. But they were conducting mass domestic surveillance. Operations against anti-war activists. There you go. And political dissidents. There you go. In direct violation of its charter. The story caused a national firestorm in general. I mean, everybody was pissed, right? And Senator Frank Church of Idaho, not a big state, was appointed as the new chair of a new Senate Select Committee to investigate all the intelligence agencies. In big trouble. What they found was pretty staggering. So you might have heard this particular project, COINTELPRO, the FBI's secret war on Americans. The FBI ran a program called COINTELPRO, which stands for Counterintelligence Program. Now, this goes way back to 56 to 71. Its targets were not foreign spies, but they were American citizens the FBI considered politically inconvenient. The Civil Rights Movement, NAACP, South Christian Leadership Conference, Black Panther Party, American Indian Movement, Women's Liberation Movement. Damn, they didn't even want the women's to be liberated, right? Maybe they did, but they just didn't want them to be attacking the government, right? And anti-war organizations. Isn't this so fascinating? Because the government really puts so much effort into people believing in the war. They'll even go to huge extents to get the American citizens to buy into the war. And then if we don't buy into the war, guess what? They keep tabs on the people that don't want us to be in the war. That's wild to me. And this stuff has been going on since 56. I mean, this is like 70 years of them keeping tabs on people. Maybe longer. The tactics included infiltrating organizations with informants, sending anonymous letters designed to create distrust between the leaders, leaking damaging information to the press, and directly sabotaging legal political activity. You know, and this is in congressional record, admitted by the FBI. They wiretapped Martin Luther King's phones in his hotel rooms for years and compiled a dossier of his personal life. And in 64, well, they sent King an anonymous package containing audio recordings and a letter telling him he had 34 days, widely interpreted as a suggestion that he should take himself out before his secrets were exposed. The letter was signed, King, look into your heart. That's interesting. And that's damning. FBI Director Hoover called King the most dangerous Negro in America. And this was the domestic intelligence program of the United States government against its own citizens, against a man who won the Nobel Peace Prize. What was the CIA doing? They had an operation called Operation Chaos, collecting files on over 7,000 Americans. CIA mail, opening programs, intercepted first-class letters between Americans and the Soviet Union for 20 years. Yeah, I mean that makes sense. I mean, it's like prison. They're going to monitor letters going out from America to the Soviet Union and vice versa. I think that just is what they're going to do. The committee documented assassination plots against foreign leaders using methods including poison, exploding devices, and mafia connections. You know, this stuff may not surprise you at all. Now, the NSA in 1975 had Operation Shamrock, which had been running since 1945, and the NSA receiving copies of all telegrams entering and leaving the United States from major telegraph companies, which they had to do because maybe that was just a way that people were going to get around it and spy. There was also Operation Minaret, which maintained watch lists of American citizens whose communications would be flagged and collected, anti-war activists, civil rights leaders, and journalists. So they maintained watch lists whose communications would be flagged and collected. So they were just collecting all of the data and communications of all these different people way back in 1945. And this goes even into alien stuff because when there was a crash ship in Kecksburg, Pennsylvania, they were writing, I think there were some secretaries that were writing up a story about the Kecksburg UFO with like what looked like hieroglyphic writing on it, and a ticker tape came across, and that's how they received information on back in the day from other news agencies. And across it said, "This is the FBI. You will not document, you will not record, you will not write anything about this crash." And they came across their ticker tape and they're like, "Shit, we can't write about this. We can't publish anything." So this is Church's warning, and I think it's pretty freaking valid, especially since we know that they've been doing this for such a long time. They've gotten pretty damn good at it, and they can record everything. This podcast, other podcasts, they can flag it. They can flag communications that you text to somebody, texts that you put on social media, posts, search histories, browser history, stuff that you've researched from decades ago, stuff that you don't want them to know. But this was Church's warning. If this government ever becomes a tyranny, which governments are known to do from time to time, if a dictator ever took charge in this country, the technological capacity that the intelligence community has given the government could enable it to impose total tyranny, and there would be no good way to fight back. And that's true because who has the most information and the most firepower wins. And they would have both. He was talking about this in 1975, telegrams and phone taps. He had no idea that the internet was coming. That's crazy, right? So let's talk about post 9/11, the Patriot Act. So the Church Committee actually created some nice reforms to what they were allowed to collect. So FISA, which is the courts that monitor the supervision and the intel that they gather, was created in 1978. COINTELPRO style programs were officially ended. For about 23 years, things seemed a little more officially constrained. Then 9/11 happened. Within weeks, architecture was rebuilt from the ground up, bigger, faster, and more comprehensive, and basically in secret. The Patriot Act basically kind of happened in secret. It happened about a month and a half later on October 26th. They passed it 45 days after 9/11, 342 pages of some of the most constricting and widespread gathering of information without needing warrants. It gave the FBI power to demand records from any business, library, hospitals, banks, internet providers without a traditional warrant, using national security letters that came with permanent gag orders. So when they gathered the information, it meant you had to shut up about it too. Recipients could never tell anyone they received one, including their own lawyer. That's fucked up. The secret, before the Patriot Act was even passed, the NSA had already begun warrantless wiretapping of Americans under secret presidential authorization called Stellar Wind, Project Stellar Wind, collecting phone call content, email, bulk metadata, internet browsing data without warrants. The FISA court was basically bypassed entirely. So you see what I'm saying? When we were talking about like dark government stuff, conspiracy shit and stuff like that, and people say, oh, it could never happen. Well, they don't go through traditional routes. So you're never going to hear about it. The Congress is never going to hear about it. So they can't fight back against it. So there's no way for them to say, hey, you're doing something wrong. We need to have a discussion about this and have a committee. Well, they can't do that because there's no way they're ever going to know about it. The same way that most of these secret technological corporations and weapons producers and UFO reverse engineering corporations do it. The government hides the information, so you can't request any documentation, public hearing documentation on it, because it's all private company contractors. It's kind of the same scenario here. Although the NSA wasn't a private contractor, were they? Unless they hired private contractors to do this, but yeah, you still had to have orders from them. So there was a senior Justice Department officials discovered the full scope in 2004. Multiple top officials threatened to resign, including FBI Director Robert Mueller, who I think got arrested, right? Didn't he get a prison sentence? An acting attorney General James Comey as well, who refused to authorize it from the hospital room where the Attorney General laid ill. The program was modified, but it continued. But along came Edward Snowden. So Snowden was born in 1983. His grandfather was actually a rear admiral, and his father was a Coast Guard officer. And he grew up basically wanting to be, part of the American dream, helping out America. So he actually joined the Army in 2004, hoping to fight in Iraq. He broke both of his legs in training, yikes, and was discharged. He moved through the intel world, CIA technical officer, then NSA contractor through Booz Allen Hamilton, which is a corporation that hires contractors. By his late 20s, he had top secret clearance and access to some of the most sensitive surveillance programs in the world. Can you imagine that in your late 20s, dude? Like, I remember in my mid-20s, I'm drinking beers and hanging out. And in my later 20s, I'm still drinking beers and hanging out. Can you imagine if you let some secret slip? Whoops, oh, shit. Yeah, we're monitoring everybody. Holy fuck, sorry about that. They're probably monitoring our conversation here at the bar. Oh, shit. I'm already arrested. In 2012, he began systematically copying classified documents. And this is interesting, right? Because he said he raised these questions internally initially. He was like, hey, guys, what about this? This doesn't seem legal. What about this? This doesn't seem legal. And they basically told him to stay quiet. So he started copying classified documents. And in May 2013, he flew to Hong Kong. He contacted a couple journalists and filmmakers. And on June 5th, 2013, The Guardian published its first story on him, and the world changed. And there's a lot of programs that he came out and told about. Like PRISM is the big one, but there's others too. So PRISM allowed the NSA to collect a whole bunch of data from the servers of nine major U.S. companies, okay, including Facebook, Yahoo, AOL, Paltalk, never heard of that one, YouTube, Microsoft, Apple, Facebook, you name it. They were gathering data from all of these places, and all of the data that they wanted, they could collect. Think about that for a second. So like pictures sent, emails sent, messages sent, private stuff. And this include emails, chats, photos, documents, connections, logs, video calls, man, shit, man, you're having a nice moment with your lady and all of a sudden it's recorded and then these fuckers are watching it, that's fucked up. The companies were compelled to participate and forbidden for disclosing it. This is what Church was warning about, right? Church warned that if they had a dictator in charge, not that they had a dictator in charge necessarily, but there's these agencies that are acting dictatorial saying, hey, we're going to gather all this information. You need to shut up about it. So who was the main one in charge communicating with these companies saying, hey, we're going to have access to your data servers. You're going to shut the fuck up about it, and you're never going to be able to tell anybody about it. Who's that guy? Was that the president? Was that the Secretary of State? Was that the Attorney General that we were talking about? Was it, Comey? Who was it? I don't know. So the NSA's own internal slide called it the most prolific contributor. And this was a program that Snowden himself, if you watch the movie, he created, but he didn't create for intelligence gathering on U.S. Americans. It was to gather information on potential terrorist threats to the country or, any other uprising or something like that. Not for continual monitoring of everybody's everything all the time, everywhere. So if PRISM was the front door, Muscular, which is another project, was breaking in through the back window. The NSA and British intelligence, GCHQ, secretly tapped fiber optic cables connecting Google and Yahoo. Nobody even uses Yahoo anymore. They tapped the fiber optic cables that connected Yahoo and Google data centers to each other around the world. Okay, so they're tapping them no matter where they went, collecting data in transit between their own servers. Okay, so in one 30-day period, this is wild. In one 30-day period, the NSA collected 181 million records. I mean, that number, those are like lotto numbers, man. Like, I want to win that much money, except it wasn't money, it was documents. And each document, think about this, could be hundreds of thousands of words. Then they put that all into AI, right? Because they've had AI since way before AI came out. And all that data was gathered and put into files, right? Google engineers learned about it. I think that's poorly written. There was another project called X-Keyscore, a program that allowed NSA analysts to search through vast databases of emails, online chats, browsing history, IP address, phone numbers, behaviors. Snowden told The Guardian, I was sitting at my desk. I could wiretap anyone from you or your accountant to a federal judge to the president if I had a personal email. That's fucking crazy, right? And they had another project, Boundless Informant, a data visualization tool tracking how much data the NSA collected globally. In a 30-day period in March 2013, 97 billion pieces of intelligence. Well, there's 8 billion people on the planet, and then you have basically 90 billion more pieces of information. The existence of this tool directly contradicted Clapper's claim that he sat in front of Congress and said, not that we are collecting data on Americans wittingly, but that is found to be a lie. There was also a couple other programs called Mystic and Sumulget, programs that allowed the NSA to record 100% of a foreign country's phone calls and store them for 30 days. Afghanistan confirmed this. The Bahamas also confirmed this. Every single phone call, including calls to and from Americans. That is every 100% of a foreign country's calls. That's not just to Americans. That's from other countries to other countries. That's like having all the that's like that Batman movie when Morgan Freeman made that radar thing that could like track down anybody anywhere anytime. I guarantee you they got that. And that's and then extrapolate that into all of the phone lines everywhere, not just in Gotham City, but everywhere. So if they want to track somebody down, I mean, all they got to do is listen for him, right? Or her. Under a secret interpretation of the Section 215, there was a bulk phone metadata program that the NSA was collecting metadata on virtually every phone call made in the United States, which basically includes like the who, the when, for how long, from where. And the senators who wrote Section 215 said the secret interpretation didn't bear any resemblance to what they intended. The federal court later ruled it as illegal anyway. Now, see, this is where I have questions, because I believe that if they have the capability to gather all of the information, right, they can gather all of it from anywhere, anytime. They have the program to do it 13 years ago, 14 years ago, 15 years, 20 years ago. Now think about that. Think about how far we've come, and we have AI and all that stuff now. Tell me why. And this is kind of where I wanted to get to, and I'll go back to the secret programs in a second. Why can the government not give us information about pending riots or pending, takeovers of cities that we've been seeing happening lately? We've been having all kinds of just chaos going on, and nobody is warning our police departments. Nobody is warning the people. They could warn people and say, hey, there's a whole bunch of people headed towards the city center. Be careful. Maybe they don't want to warn us because maybe they think more people will go to those locations. But think about that. When there's like a teen takeover, when there's a riot, when there's social uprising, and you want to be safe. You don't necessarily, some people want to be there, right? But some people don't want to be there. They want to be away from that stuff. They want to be safe. And think about that for a second. They could stop it. They can make people aware, but they're not. And so that concerns me, because I feel like people could be safe. People could be safer. And they could also stop a lot of the bad stuff that's going on, which makes you wonder, is there a motivation to have the chaos going on? If you can stop something, you're supposed to. There's something, I think even constitutionally, they say that if you are of able mind and able body, you are supposed to step up and stop something bad from happening. The NSA could literally be like the police of the world. They just need the ability to act on it like the FBI can. So they do give the information that they receive to the FBI, but the problem is that like they could literally find anybody they want. They could predict with AI, with or without AI, it doesn't really matter. With all the information that they receive, that gets compiled and put into little files, right? And they've been doing this since 45, and they've been monitoring, all these different movements and actions, and they could stop it, and they could send out, information. Why are they not stopping it now? Why didn't they stop all the riots that have happened for the past 10, 15, 20 years? They could have. They could have intercepted it. They could have stopped it. But they haven't. Do they not have the power to do it? Do they not have the money to do it? Do they not have the legal authority to do it? What's the deal? What do you think? All right. That's my rant there. I'm going to go back to this. So there's another couple different programs that they ran, projects. Fairview, Storm, Brew, and Blarney. Secret relationships with major U.S. telecommunication companies, giving the NSA direct access to physical infrastructure of the internet inside the United States. So they were given physical access. So this isn't just like digital stuff that they're grabbing from the internet. They're getting physical access. They can go to the locations, put whatever they want into them probably, and then do whatever they need to do. So this is fiber optic cable switching stations, which is within telecommunications companies, and internet exchange points. And I know a couple folks that worked in some of these switch stations, and I worked for a couple different companies as well, but just on like customer service side, not anything technical like switching stations, internet exchange points, stuff like that. So that's pretty interesting. So what's the fallout? So Snowden was charged under the Espionage Act, passport revoked in transit. He lived in Russia ever since. Um, he never given a chance to argue public interest defense. Russia granted him permanent residency in 2022. There's been no pardon yet. It is interesting, though. I mean, like, if they wanted him, they could go over there, but that might cause an international incident. I don't know. Maybe they think he's already given out so much information. There's nothing. He doesn't have any more access to anything. He already wrote a book and all that stuff. So, to the programs, yeah, this is crazy. That Clapper guy that totally lied and said that they're not recording stuff on Americans. He became a CNN national security analyst. So don't watch CNN anymore. And to the programs, the bulk metadata program was ruled illegal by the federal court in 2015. It expired in 2020. PRISM and Section 702 were reauthorized in 2024. That's got to make you feel real good. So PRISM is continuing to record everything all the time, no matter what. And it was expanded. I don't know how you can expand it even more. The new definition of who can be compelled to assist in surveillance now potentially includes any business that handles communications. Interesting. So from Frank Church, to wrap this up, from Frank Church to Snowden, Frank Church investigated intelligence agencies in 1975 and found there was a bunch of programs running since the 1940s. After 9/11 happened, it just expanded and went off the rails. They needed a Patriot Act to monitor everything, everywhere, all the time, and for everybody to get on board with it. That's what they needed, that's what they wanted, and that's what they got. The question isn't whether the government surveils our own citizens, which is a shame. That's confirmed. The government's own documents confirm that, court rulings and congressional testimony. The question is, what are they doing with all of it, right? Who decides what's a threat? Who decides who goes on a list? Who decides who goes to prison for the rest of their life? And who provides oversight when the oversight body that approves 99% of what goes on in there is blind to it because it's beyond or above top secret, or it's within the dark government's hands. The church asked those questions in 1975, and Snowden showed us that they still don't have any good answers in 2013, and nobody's really been able to take it seriously since, because they can't do anything about it. We do have some very strong politicians in office that are against corruption in the government. So maybe they'll be able to do something. It just depends on how high it is in their priority list. I mean, right now it seems like UFOs are pretty high up there. I mean, I know these guys are working on other stuff as well, but it seems like there are a lot of folks that are willing to fight for freedom of information. Edward Snowden, he gave up everything, dude. You should watch the movie. Great movie. The great actor that plays him. I just love that movie. Edward Snowden, he gave up his career, his girlfriend, his family, his freedom, everything. He gave up everything. I mean, shit, I hope he knows what fucking Russian. I mean, I'm sure he knows it now. But, I mean, everywhere you go, everybody's speaking Russian, you're speaking English, and I don't know, maybe they feel some kind of way against Americans. I don't know. Was he a traitor? Was he a hero? You could think he was both. You could think he was either way. But the information that he released and revealed is important. Frank Church told you exactly what would happen if nobody watched the Watchers. Then nobody watched the Watchers, and then it happened, and then the surveillance state happened. It wasn't built by, like, a bunch of villains, like, twirling their mustaches, like, trying to be all sketchy. It was built by bureaucrats, lawyers finding loopholes, judges approving requests, and a Congress that voted for certain things it didn't even read or have a chance to read because Well, they were scared by 9/11. Think about that. And the scariest part is, a lot of them aren't evil. They're just doing their jobs. And, they're barely required, anyone to be, doing anything about it. If you have nothing to hide, you have nothing to fear, is what a lot of people might say right before they read your emails. So think about, this is wild because I think it's important to keep this in mind when you're writing your emails, when you're recording, when you're talking to somebody, when you're sending a text message, when you're writing an email, writing a document, whatever the case is. You have freedom of speech, you have freedom of media, you have freedom of thought. However, it doesn't hold you against the consequences. So keep in mind you need to be aware of that. Now, that being said, again, there are tons of people out there that are doing bad shit. And it boggles my mind that the government hasn't put the fucking hammer down on these people. They could arrest a bunch of people that committed all these crimes, hurt people, and they don't do it. It's not a priority for them. Or is it a priority for them to just let shit go? Just let shit happen and let the world burn? I mean, these are my real questions. I would like real answers because I feel like we're getting let down as a society. I feel like we've paid the price, we've paid the cost, the bills, the taxes, and so on and so forth for this kind of technology. We deserve the safety of being able to go outside of our homes and not get attacked by some lunatics that it could have predicted would be a lunatic, that it knew about and didn't send out warnings for. We have technology now. We have the technology where we can track everyone everywhere that's a hazard. They could send it. They could warn us, right? There's offender lists for a lot of things. Sex offender lists. There's felony offender lists. You can look up history on a lot of people. Why don't we have an app from the government that says, hey, watch out for this crazy fucker. Watch out for this crazy fucker. Is that an invasion of privacy? Well, they're already invading our privacy. Why don't we reap the benefit of it? Let us know if there's a problem out on our streets. That way, if we want to go out, we can. If we're worried about it, you could even keep it anonymous if you wanted to. You could say, hey, right now in your neighborhood, there's somebody out and about that's, got a history of this and that and the third. Now, you could look out your window and see the person maybe, or, try to, if they're on the other side of the block, try to walk around and try to see who it is. But in all honesty, if there's somebody out there with that kind of record, you're not going to probably want to go out until they're gone, right? Let me know what you think. Let me know what you think the government should do with this information. Or should it not have access to it at all? Or should it have access to some info, but not all? Like information that's only specifically pertaining to like foreign adversaries that might cause havoc in America, or domestic adversaries that might cause problems in America. Why should they have access to all information all at the same time? Seems a bit Orwellian, and it seems like a bad idea. I understand they need to know ahead of time, but at the same time, how does the system ignore the stuff that's not important? Do they make accidental arrests? I've heard of that as well. But a lot of times it's like through Amazon, things like that. So anyway, I'm going to wrap it up there. What do you think? Let me know in the comments. I love you guys. Take care of yourselves. Stay positive. Protect your light, peace, spirituality, your emotional health, your spiritual health, your physical health. Follow through on your hobbies and your goals and your dreams. And as always, continue to question the universe around you. Till next time, guys, take care. Lockdown Universe out. Peace.